I'm Mystic, and welcome back to my crafting channel. So I'm trying to record this on my phone, so if my eyes keep shifting, I apologize. I am just trying to figure out what's going to work best for this whole recording thing. But welcome back to the Mystic Crafting Podcast. I think that's what I've called it for now, but that name can 100% change whenever. I just couldn't really come up with a good name on the spot for this that kind of incorporates all of the crocheting and knitting that I want to do, because a lot of the different podcasts I have watched / listened to, they're mostly like knitters, or I think mostly crocheters, and I kind of want to do a little bit of both. So last episode, I kind of just introduced you to me and everything that I've made along the way of what my 7 to 8 year journey in crocheting, and then a year into my knitting journey. Also, I apologize for all of the coughing, and if my voice kind of comes and goes. I got COVID since the last one I recorded, and then I'm also engaged. I don't have my pendant on, so hold on. But I am currently engaged. This is a mermaid pendant. I think I'm gonna put that on right now. My boyfriend / fiance proposed to me with this mermaid pendant as soon as I got back from a little trip to visit my dad. And I believe the next time I make a recording, I will actually be married. So it's exciting. If you don't know what a mermaid pendant is, it is from this game called Stardew Valley that I have loved playing since like the first year my boyfriend and I have been dating. And so this is just really special to me because in the game, if you want to propose to somebody to want to marry them, you give them a mermaid pendant. So this is definitely something that is very special to me, and it means a lot. So that's really exciting news. But yeah, so anyways, what was I doing? Yes, so last time I introduced myself and what I've been making. So today I thought I would share with you all of the hooks I have, all of the knitting needles I have, and all of like the notions, I think they're called. So like the stitch markers and everything. I thought I'd share all of those with you. I have essentially gathered over the years, which is a lot, arguably. So yeah. So I think I want to start off with like my crochet hooks because I started off as a crocheter, so I figure let me share some of the crochet hooks I have, which in all honesty, the majority of my crochet hooks I got off of Amazon. So they're very easy to get, in my opinion, and arguably on the cheaper side compared to knitting needles. Because with knitting needles, you can't necessarily buy a whole set. Like, you can, but like you can buy a set of knitting needles, but it's like straight knitting needles. You can't necessarily buy a set of circular knitting needles for cheap. I do have a set of kind of like circular knitting needles. They're called interchangeable knitting needles that I'll show you later on. But I've noticed with knitting that it adds up a lot for what you need to make different projects, and it is definitely a hobby that costs a lot of money to even try to get started on just because of the knitting needles. While crochet, I spent, I want to say like 10 to 12 bucks on my first set of hooks. And there are hooks that are fairly more expensive because they fit your need. So for a lot of people, like ergonomic hooks are on the more expensive side, and those can run about, I want to say, more than $15 for one hook, which is a lot of money. And arguably, yes, I should invest in those at some point, but the hooks that I have in my possession do the job that I need to do, and I know now over the years to kind of take a step back, put my crocheting away, and just give my wrist like a break if it's been too much. But so I bought like this set off of Amazon. I want to say for $10-12. I can't exactly remember. And these might not necessarily be my go-to hooks, but I at least know that I can get in a travel case. And I've got like very tiny hooks that I don't really use, and then I've got your standard hooks. And this one goes all the way up to like a 6.5. I usually use like I want to say a 4 and a 6 usually, so like I'm set with this. If I need a bigger hook, I can easily just go to like Joann's or Michael's and buy an individual hook of that size. So like if I need an 8mm or 10mm hook, I can just go to Joann's or Michael's, pick up a hook there, and I'm pretty good. I'm pretty solid. Don't really need to change the sizing necessarily. Unlike knitting needles, if you were to get circular, you can get it in 16 inches, 32 inches, 40 inches, and if like the 16 inches was too small for your project, you gotta go out and get another circular needle that's longer to fit your project. So definitely love my crochet hooks. I've got, oh god, where is it? I've got even more. Just loosely, because I probably went to Michael's or Joann's and I was like, oh, I need a 5.5 millimeter hook. And oh, looky there, they've got one. Because I have had it where there are differences in the hook. And I forget what they're called because I looked this up many years ago, and I think I learned, oh, I like this one over this one. But at the same time, I can't tell the difference most of the time. But I do remember that I think with like the set I had at the time for my crochet hooks, there was just like this little bit of the metal was kind of sticking out, and so it's like you couldn't really get rid of it unless you sanded it down. And I was just like, I'm just getting really annoyed with my yarn getting caught on it. So I was at like Joann's or Michael's and was just like, I need a new 5.5 millimeter hook. So bought a new 5.5 millimeter hook. And I probably bought another set because all these look like they're from a set. I think I wanted to see if like, because these I think are considered kind of like more ergonomic handles. And so I wanted to see if I could tell the difference between this kind of hook with the handle versus this kind of hook without the handle. And kind of see if it helped ease the pain in my wrist while I was making stuff. I can tell you I can't. I don't think I can. So I don't know. It might help other people. It might not. For me, I don't think it really matters too much on the different types of hooks and stuff. So that's mainly my crocheting hooks. Again, not a lot because I can use just about any kind of hook and still feel pain eventually. There's this company called Furls Hooks, or I think it's just Furls, but they do make crochet hooks. And tungsten, I forget exactly how to pronounce it, but it's the knitting / crocheting style of fiber work. But they make those types of hooks, and those are definitely more ergonomic. But again, kind of out of my budget to buy one of their hooks. But one day I hope to be able to at least own one and kind of see what the difference is compared to the more cheaper versions of hooks that you can get off of Amazon. So on to my knitting needles. I've got a lot. This is filled with knitting needles as well. I also have straightening needles. So of course, when I first started knitting, I decided to opt for straight knitting needles. So I believe I got this off of Amazon for like probably less than $15. And they're nice wooden ones. But I can tell you, I didn't use these for very long. I think I tried to make like a scarf with them, and then I got bored of that. And also my dog chewed through a pair of these. So that made me really sad. Yeah, my dog did not appreciate me crocheting and knitting when I first got her. But she's kind of learned now that she can't stop me and just huffs and puffs when I do take out my knitting or crocheting projects out. But I did learn very quickly that I did not really like straight knitting needles, and I was doing some research, saw circular knitting needles, and was like, ooh, that looks like fun. And at the time I was streaming, and I wanted to share me learning how to knit on stream. And the straightening needles, when you have your camera facing downwards, it just didn't feel like it'd work knitting on a table. So I looked into circular knitting needles and decided that seems like the better option to kind of try and learn. And I made the mistake of not fully doing my research. Went to a local knitting store where I was living, and it did feel kind of awkward because I didn't know anything at all. And the ladies were very sweet, but at the same time, they were just like, what are you looking for? Why don't you know what you're looking for and what you're asking for? So I was like trying to ask them like, oh, I'm trying to get knitting needles. I'll work for streaming purposes and being able to kind of show other people like what I'm doing, but I don't want the needles to kind of get in the way and stuff like that. And I didn't know what kind of length. I didn't know the difference between 16 inches, 32 inches, and 40 inches, and like how that would affect my knitting and what I was doing. So she essentially just gave me a 40-inch knitting needle that I didn't realize was like $20 to $30. Because when I get nervous, I just kind of shut down and just say, yeah, okay, yeah. And just accept however much I'm paying, which is not the best way to go about it. So I ended up buying a a 40-inch circular needle set. Not set, just a circular needle. And it wasn't until maybe a couple days later when I was like, that was a mistake, I think. But overall, it wasn't a mistake because it did open me up to circular needles and kind of understanding them a bit more. And kind of what the purpose of having a 40-inch versus a 16-inch does. Because for 16 inches, I've learned you definitely want those for if you're knitting socks, which I have started to knit socks, but I am still a very long journey before I fully feel comfortable making socks. But I have so many different types of circular knitting needles. I have the metal ones from Chaigu. I do love these. They are very slick and very nice. I like the clinking sound I get from them. But they're also very expensive because they're metal. So I've got several different sizes of those and in different lengths. I've got ones from either Joann's or Michael's. They're aluminum, but one thing I don't like from them is that the connection, I was going to call it string, but it's not string, but the connection here is just very meh. So it's like I definitely feel like my project is a lot looser if I knit with these. But these were definitely a lot cheaper. So these, I think at most was like maybe $5-10. And I think I just wanted these to kind of try them out, figure out if these were worth it or not. Again, for me, not so much. For someone on a budget, definitely could probably get away with them. And they do have that nice clinking sound as well. I don't know if you can hear that. And then I do remember going into Michael's and they were having a sale on clover, on a set of clovers. So these are kind of like these are interchangeable knitting needles, but it's kind of like you buy them individually instead of in a set. And I think I got these for like $2 each at most, maybe $5. So I've got like, I've got different sizes. I've got different cable lengths. I didn't know what they meant at the time, and I was just like, oh, I want to try knitting, and, you know, these are on sale, so why not? So I just got a bunch of these, and they're wooden, so in general they are cheaper than the Chaigu ones. Hold on, I got an itch. My hair is all over the place. And their circular knitting needles are pretty good. I was mainly using their 8mm to make the cardigan for my friend, and so this one wasn't too bad, in all honesty. The smaller ones I think I did struggle a little bit with, but not too bad, because I think their connection is similar to like the cheap aluminums from Michaels and Joann's. And I've learned that I don't really like those ones, but there are knitters out there who prefer those over the Chaigu and Likey ones, which is a little bit more tight. So it's like, it's definitely harder to kind of navigate the connection and where you want it to go and how you want it to be when you're knitting. So yeah, that's all of my circular ones. So yeah, I've got Chaigu, I've got Clover, and I've got Likey. These are the 3 to 4 different types of circular knitting needles I found, and I have learned what I like and what I don't like. I do really like the Chaigu, and I like the Likey. They're very smooth when knitting with them and like moving my stitches over from needle to needle. But of course, I've also looked into the pros and cons of each one. So with the Chaigu, the pro is that it's metal, so it's less likely to deteriorate, but it might, the main con is if you're going to be traveling, you might not be able to travel with them just because their needles are a little bit sharper just because they are metal. So if you're going through like the airport and airport security, you might get flagged for it, and it is likely for your needles to be taken away, which is my fear. And it can still happen with wooden needles, but maybe a little bit less likely because they're a little bit more blunt. So that is one thing with wooden needles, is that they're a little bit less blunt. You probably could get through security with them, but what I've heard is that they do deteriorate over time. So you could get like splinters in them, but I'm not 100% sure on that because I haven't been using my needles for as long or as often either. So not 100% sure on that, but maybe it's something I learn over the years as I continue to use them. So I do technically have 2 different interchangeable needle sets. Technically the Clover one, but I also don't really call that a set because I only have 3 different sizes, 4 different sizes at most. But I do have a Likey interchangeable needle set. Now, in general, interchangeable needle sets are a lot more expensive, but they are worth investing in my opinion, because you could just end up with all of these circular needles in different sizes and in different lengths. Well, an interchangeable needle set kind of gives you all of that in one. So this set comes with, I think it's a 3-inch needle. So these are the 3-inch needles. And I have from 3.25, which is missing because it's currently on a project, all the way up to 6.5 millimeters. So it essentially is the same as getting a crochet hook set. Is that I have from a small to a pretty big needle. And then this one came with, I think, 2 16-inch cables and one 20 or 24-inch cable. So that's nice. You get multiple cables, and then if I needed, like, let's say a 30-inch cable or a 40-inch cable, I can actually buy that individually, but it might not measure exactly to 30 to 40 inches just because my needles are short. So I think it would measure to 30 or 32 to 40 inch length for the circular needle if I had like a 3.5, but because I have a 3, inch needles, it doesn't exactly measure correctly. But in my opinion, I feel like that's not a big issue because it won't really be an issue if I'm not casting on a whole lot of stitches where I need exactly 40 inches worth of it, for example. And usually for most of my projects, I'm pretty okay with using a 30 to 32 inch circular needle and not worrying about the stitches not fitting onto the needles. And so this was $125, which was fairly expensive for needles, and I realized that, you know what, it was worth getting this versus individual sets because I'm working on a project for a friend where I don't have her here to try things on, and I actually had to gauge my project. And I realized if I gauged my project and my gauge was off and I needed a bigger needle, I couldn't go up in a needle size without having to go to the store and buy a new set of needles. So I returned all the needles I initially bought and got this instead because of the fact that if my gauge was off and I needed a larger needle size, I had the ability to do that at home and not have to go back to the store the next weekend to go and buy more needles and spend more money on it. So definitely something worth investing in, especially if you want to continue with knitting as a hobby. What else do I have? So I think these are called notions, but I also just call them stitch markers. So I was in Reno visiting family, and there is this yarn store, yarn store called Jimmy Beans Wool, or Jimmy Wool Beans. It's something along those lines. But they have a storefront in Reno, and I really wanted to go visit there. Their store is beautiful. If you're ever in the area, 100% visit it and check it out. They have a claw machine that you can get, like, not little bits of yarn, but like kind of random yarn for 50 cents. And I didn't try because I didn't have 50 cents, but I thought that was a really fun idea. They have so many different yarn that I literally was like, I want to take yarn home with me, but I can't fit it into my luggage. But I really want to get yarn. But I did stop myself from getting yarn. And they have Dell Q bags as well that are like kind of knitting / crocheting project bags that look like purses or like a backpack, but you can put your projects in it and then like kind of knit or crochet as you're walking, and I thought that was really cool. And I've seen them online, but I didn't know like which one would fit more my style or which one was big enough for the projects I would want to be working on. So it was nice to be able to see that in person and kind of get a feel for it and kind of figure out, okay, this one's a little bit too big in my opinion, or this one's too small for the projects I want to do, or this one isn't really my style. So it was nice to be able to see that and kind of determine, oh yeah, I would like this one, so that later on along the line, I could just purchase it online and not have to worry about like, but is it what I really want? Do I really want to be spending X amount of money on this to not like it? So yeah. So while I was there, I got these stitch markers. These ones are like sharks, because sharks are like one of my favorite animals. So I thought that they were like really cute. I don't know when I'll ever use these many stitch markers, but you never know. You never know. And they're just like little cute shark ones. And then I also saw this like kind of plant one. I'm not a big plant person, but I thought these looked so cute and they were just so adorable. I also have to check out the people who made them because honestly, they're fantastic. And if I ever need more stitch markers, I know who to go to. Here we go. I also have the stitch markers from Coco Knits. And these are very nice for knitting. For crocheting, not so much just because they're circular. And so with crocheting, you kind of want to be able to take them off. But this one I've got in... They're size 9 millimeters. So they're pretty big and work for bigger projects as well. And they're also very, very colorful. I also have some like metal ones from a different set that I got that I just wanted to mix in here so that it was easier for me to be like, okay, all the big stitch markers are in this container. And then I've got another little one that has 3 different sizes. So this big size I put into my 9mm stitch marker container. Then they got these tiny ones that are really good for the smaller knitting needles that you'd be using. And then they've got these latchable ones, which are very nice for crocheting. And so they're more metal. So this is the latchy one, and it's very cute and very helpful in all honesty. And then there's these little itty bitty tiny ones. So those I think are all of my stitch markers. Oh, I have one that I really want to show you. I haven't really been able to use, but when I was visiting my grandparents, they live near a local yarn store in Coopville, Washington. And so I wanted to go check out the yarn over there and just wanted to see what their yarn store looked like. Oh, new video started. Cool. But I also got this stitch marker that's like a little mermaid, and I thought that was so cute, and it fit for the Pacific Northwest. Like, honestly, when I think of the Pacific Northwest, I can definitely see a mermaid being there. So I thought that was really cute. What else do I have back here? So I got stitch stoppers as well. So these you put on your knitting needle to make sure that your stitches don't fall off your knitting needle. I bought this just if I wanted to bring a project with me on the plane. I haven't exactly used it, but I have used it at home here working on projects, and it's like I'm worried about my stitches falling off the needles, and these actually are very helpful. I also have wool wash. This one is soak, and since I plan to make more knitted wear, I figured this would be helpful to have so that I can easily clean my knitted wear and soak them and be able to block them as well. And speaking of blocking, I have these pads to use for blocking purposes. Honestly, these were probably more expensive than necessary. Like, you could probably buy the stuff that teachers put in, like, kindergarten rooms, and that would probably work just as well. Which, if I need more, I might just do that and go and buy, like, a pack of the kindergarten stuff. Just to have that work better and probably be a bit cheaper. So yeah, that's all of like the notions and hooks and needles that I have. Honestly, I wasn't expecting for that to go as long as it did, but I also ramble a lot. So I did buy some kind of random-ish yarn from only one yarn dyer this time because of the whole getting married thing and whatnot. And actually I'm going to a wedding as well at the end of this month. I don't really have enough in my like savings and stuff right now to be able to kind of splurge on buying yarn, and believe me, there's been so many beautiful yarn that has come and gone, and I'm just like, I'm getting FOMO from not being able to buy this yarn, and it makes me really, really sad. But at the same time, my wallet's like, you need to chill for a bit. So I think I'm gonna try and finish a project first, and then maybe be able to buy myself more yarn. Because there was this colorway and collection that Jador Fibers had released that was so beautiful, and it was like a fall collection. It was so beautiful, and I wanted it so badly, but I had to tell myself multiple times, you cannot have this yarn, you cannot afford this yarn right now, you don't even know what you want to do with this yarn. So I had to let it go, but hopefully one day she brings it back and I can be able to purchase some of the collection. But let's see. Where do I open this from? I did get some yarn from Candy Fibers, and she was just having a sale, and these were pre-dyed yarn that she already had in her store, and she has so many different colorways available right now as well. And I had seen online somewhere had suggested that of just like buying a single skein from like different yarn dyers that you like, and you can kind of grow your collection that way. And I was like, oh, that's a good idea, because then you're not spending as much, because I am somebody who likes to buy kind of in sweater quantities, just because I enjoy making blankets, but I do want to make sweaters. So it does kind of start to add up, so I can't buy from so many people. But I figured by buying stuff that she already had, I'm sorry if you can hear the motorcycle outside, but I figured by buying stuff that she already had in stock and of different bases, I could kind of see like which one I liked more from her, but also have an idea for different yarn dyers as well, of like, oh yeah, okay, I like the DK, or I like the fingering, or I like the worsted weight a little bit more. And I think a lot of different yarn dyers use superwash merino, so it also kind of gives me an idea of just like, okay, I like this in fingering with the super merino mixed with nylon or mixed with silk and stuff like that. It kind of gives me an idea, and I feel like will make it easier to connect different yarn from different dyers together to make, let's say, for example, a sweater. So it's just like I could have different colorways that kind of match from different dyers and make something out of it. So it kind of just gives me a baseline, which I thought would be nice. So I've got this one that is called Berry Crumble, and it's I like the coloring, it's very, very cute. And this one is in Deluxe Sock. So I think this is kind of like a fingering type, but I might be making a sock out of this. It feels very, very nice. This is 80% superwash merino and 20% nylon. And then I've got this one that is Space Mountain. This is a Lush DK, which is 100% superwash merino. So I have never had DK before, and so it definitely gives me an idea of kind of like how big is DK. Then I've got this mermaid, which is, look at this, it's so pretty. This is in classic sock, so this is a 4-ply. The deluxe sock is a 2-ply. So I can kind of see the difference in them a little bit. And so this one is 75% superwash merino and 25% nylon. And then I've got Castatic Lake. This is also in Lush DK. So I could probably make like a sweater or a shirt with like this color combination. I'll have to find other ones that are pretty similar, but definitely like a DK and 100% superwash merino from like another yarn dyer. If I like their colorways, I could definitely match it with these. So that'll be nice, for sure. So it definitely gives me a nice idea, because the yarn that I got from Jador Fibers and EFK Explorer Fiber Knits, previously, they're all on fingering. So I probably could actually match all those together, but all I knew was fingering weight, and I didn't know any other type of yarn. So this gives me kind of like a good mix of yarn on what I could mix them with or not. So these will probably just sit in my collection for a while until I can find different colorways when I can buy more yarn and can afford to buy more yarn. And be able to kind of mix and match. Or if Candy Fibers comes out with other colorways that match with the Space Mountain and Static Lake, that will make it easier too, as well. So it'll be a nice segue or jump into kind of buying sweater quantities, but at the same time not buying them in sweater quantities now and again. So that'll be nice. I think that, oh wait, no, I do want to show you the progress that I've been making on my friend's shirt. So I'm making her a moonset tee from Ozetta, I think it is. And I have just put the front kind of together and like the V-neck of it all. So there's still a lot more to go, but I've got the back and like the V-neck all set. So I find that to be like really exciting, and it's kind of all coming together. There's definitely been things that I've learned along the way, and I think I spent like almost a day undoing a whole bunch that I did, because when I was initially doing the back, I didn't read that I was only supposed to do 40 more rows. I thought it was 40 more times or something along those lines. So I got to the point of doing it 40 more times and reread it, because I think it said, oh, you have to measure it out to being like 8.5 inches. And it was definitely like way past 8.5 inches. And I was like, how's this supposed to be 8.5 inches? And reread the instructions. I learned my mistake, and I learned to read more carefully the pattern. I think I have either a YouTube short or definitely a reel on my Instagram talking about it for sure. And it was a mistake that I made. That was a really big mistake. But I was proud of myself, because what I normally do with my knitting, because I'm not 100% sure how to undo my knitting without undoing the whole thing, unlike crochet where I could just literally pull the back row and pick up where I messed up, I didn't know how to do that for knitting. So what I've always done is I've always just completely undone it. But this time I measured to where I should have stopped, put a marker, and undid it to like a couple of rows, like a row or two before my marker, put in a lifeline, and then put in my needles and kind of went back from there. So I didn't have to undo the whole thing and do like days of work. So I was really proud of myself, because this is the first knitting project that I've done that with. Everything else is just, I've undone the whole thing and restarted over. So it is definitely something I'm proud of, and it shows that I'm learning and growing as a knitter. And it just makes me really proud and happy about that. So I'm looking forward to learning more about this pattern and how it's constructed, and even more knitting patterns as well, and doing that and figuring out, okay, how do you do this? How is this constructed? How can I fix my mistake on this pattern if I do make a mistake? So yeah, that's all I have for you today. I don't know what I'm going to do for next time. Maybe I'll show you all the different projects I have kind of just lying around that haven't been touched yet. But I'm definitely focusing on this shirt for my friend, because I want to get it done by the end of the month, but we'll see if that happens. So yeah, thank you for hanging out with me, and I will see you all around next time. Have a good one. Bye!